This next award that I'm asked to present is special and is significant because it celebrates the strength and courage of the honoree who has chosen to share their personal experience of abuse in their own voice to advance a greater outcome in the work to end sexual and domestic violence. The award signifies admiration, appreciation, and esteem for the awardee, who is an ally. She's devoted her energy to effectively targeting the intersecting issues of sexual and domestic violence, these being homophobia, transphobia, racism, in coalition with others, with the ultimate goal of ending sexual and domestic violence and oppression in all its form. The honoree embodies the stated purpose of JDI, which is JDI works together with allies to find lasting solutions that promote the safety, liberty, and dignity for victims and survivors of sexual and domestic violence, and to work together for social change to help create a world free from violence and abuse. Correspondingly, the JDI honoree was selected for this award because of her activism on behalf of women and girls and her work to break cycles of poverty and violence. As the first ever Black woman in the 100-year history of the Boston City Council and one of the first elected officials to speak out as a survivor of violence, her work as a Boston City Councilor clearly embodies and aligns with the principles outlined in the stated core purpose of JDI. And her enthusiasm to work with JDI as an ally is outstanding. She is an inspiration to both survivors and others working to end sexual and domestic violence. I don't know if the honoree knows this, but I did hear her speak a couple years ago at a statewide conference. And when I heard her keynote address, her sincere, inspirational message of hope and resiliency in the face of grave traumatic harm certainly called to all of us in the SDV world, sexual and domestic violence, I'm using my jargon, sorry, and challenged us to never give up on bringing about positive change. And yet again, she inspired at a JDI event where she challenged my colleagues and called them to action to use their voices in the halls of power for the changes that we wish to see. The honoree is as inspirational as she's accomplished. She's the recipient of the 2015 Gabrielle Giffords Rising Star Award, and she chairs the Boston City Council's Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, a committee she created in 2010, and in 2013, she formed Elevate Boston Coalition to ensure that issues uniquely impacting women and girls in the LGBTQ community were part of the mayoral debate. In 2014, along with Michelle Wu, she proposed a guarantee of health care from gender reassignment and access to hormone therapy and mental health services for transgender municipal employees and their dependents. This ordinance was unanimously passed by the Boston City Council. Through her activism and deep commitment to issues of social and economic justice and her success in moving others to act, the honoree is richly deserving of this award. And JDI proudly bestows this honor to this ally who has worked with Jane Doe on important intersecting social justice issues, ranging from sexual violence prevention, immigration reform, and transgender rights. JDI recognizes the honoree as a leader they can turn to promote policies grounded in justice and those which center the experience of the most marginalized. It is with sincerity that I present this award on behalf of JDI and the Jane Doe Board to Ms. Ayanna Pressley, Boston City Councilor-At-Large. Please come forward.
Good morning. First, I just want to thank okay, let me tell you why I'm getting emotional. Okay, so the thing is, recently on the Boston City Council, our council president, in her good wisdom, convened a workshop. And the discussion, the workshop was about equity. And before we could begin this conversation, we each had to write up on a whiteboard 5 ways in which we identify ourselves. I won't tell you my full 5, but the first thing I wrote is that I'm my mother's daughter. The second, that I'm a survivor. The third, that I am a disruptor. And the fourth, that I am a problem solver. Actually, I'll go on to tell y'all the fifth. And I'm a wife, a wife and a stepmother, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. So more than anything else, I am my mother's child. And many people are familiar with my story, that of being a survivor of a near decade of childhood sexual abuse and later campus sexual assault. And the reason why I'm emotional up here is because I know personally the self-loathing and the isolation and the despair when someone, more often than not, who said that they loved you, violated you in the most egregious of ways. And it has been quite a journey. And the fact that that little girl who spent much of her life living in fear, and for all intents and purposes could have recoiled and retreated in a corner in a fetal position and never come out. But there, but for the grace of God, go I. I remember in the Boston City Council chamber the day that I'd filed an order about what we were going to do about the epidemic that is campus sexual assault. And I disclosed that I was a survivor of campus sexual assault. And in my tenure on the council, as I said, I take pride in being a disruptor, because I think ultimately if you don't have a willingness to make people uncomfortable, we'll never realize or achieve the progress that we need to. But I also knew that when I told my story, it wasn't one that only belonged to me. Audre Lorde said, when we liberate ourselves, we liberate others. And I've told my story time and time again, even at times when it's admittedly been a trauma trigger for me, because I'm creating the space for other survivors to know that it is possible to be seen and recognized in your trauma, and that there are people that are committed to your dignity and your healing and your justice. But I've worked on many provocative, disruptive issues in my tenure on the council: human trafficking, teen pregnancy, reforming our state's liquor license laws, things that made a lot of people uncomfortable. But when I disclosed that I was a survivor of campus sexual assault, it was the first time I received hate mail. People said that I was playing victim, trying to evoke sympathy. They accused me of being a liar. They called me a whore. So every day and in every space, I want every survivor of domestic and sexual violence to know that I see you, I believe you, and I will never stop fighting for your dignity, for your healing, and for your justice. These issues and these systemic, pervasive, epidemic challenges, they are interconnected. It breaks my heart that more often than not, what we are perpetuating and passing on is generational trauma. You see, what many don't know is that I watched my mother be beaten on a daily basis, and I often intervened, trying to save her and to stave off the pummeling that she would receive. My mother, Sandy, she got beat for smiling too hard. She got beat for being too pretty or not pretty enough. She got beat for being too smart or not smart enough. Sandy got beat. And her abuser, who said he loved her, did everything possible to rob her of her joy. But for the grace of God and the love for a child, ultimately my mother was able to leave that abuser. I don't know that she valued her own life as much as she valued mine. And so she fought to get us out of that circumstance. It isn't unique that my mother is a survivor of domestic violence and sexual violence. My mother was an incest survivor as well. And here I stand, a survivor of sexual violence. Violence begets violence. And we are passing along generational trauma. And we have to be bold and unafraid and unapologetic in our commitment collectively to do something about it. What you all are doing, Tony and Deborah and the board and all of you here today, what you're affirming are at its core, are human rights, civil rights. It is a human and civil right to feel safe in your home, to feel safe in your body. I want to say thank you to our sponsors. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for your investment here today. You know, Jane Doe, DSVC, the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center, Casa Mirna, the Victim Rights Law Center, they were all here long before Me Too. They were all here long before Time's Up. They were all here long before Enough is Enough. It's great to have national movements, but the impact and the work is going to happen locally. And that's why your investment is so very important. So I thank you, and I just want to close by dedicating this award to my husband. Rick Rendon in this video getting me ugly crying on tape. I know Nerdies will tell me, is my nose clean? But seriously, we know that domestic and sexual violence is not a crime that discriminates. But we do know that disproportionately this is a crime that happens to women. It is gender-based. And I'm gonna work every day, no matter my title, no matter my position, no matter what hallways I walk, to ensure that it is no longer synonymous with being woman, to be a survivor of sexual violence, harassment, exploitation, or assault. But I don't do that work alone. And I have to commend and thank all the men who have decided to be a part of the solution. And so with that, I have to thank the man in my life who loved me in my own brokenness. You have to know it is such a demoralizing thing when you are violated by people that say they love you. And it takes so much work, and it's such a long journey to get to a place where your faith in people and men is restored. And that man did that for me. So. Thank you all very much for the honor of this award, and thank you all for being here and for the role that you're playing to ensure healthier and safer communities.